I'm Joe DeMattos. I'm the president and founder of Triple Latte Leadership, a consultancy firm focused on helping leaders to be more self-aware and increase their peak performance. So I was super blessed to have the opportunity to work with leaders throughout my life. Actually, starting from a place pretty young in Hawaii. And I was sitting literally in a Starbucks one day and I was thinking, wouldn't it be great if for the price of a couple of lattes, somebody could get a couple of leadership lessons that are normally reserved for boardrooms and cabinet rooms of CEOs and of governors. So I started taking down some notes and I started thinking about what's influenced me as a leader in terms of books and in terms of leaders. And I thought about, well, what do I really have to offer on this front? And the one remaining addiction I do have is coffee. And so I thought, I drink a gazillion cups of coffee, and what about this idea of charging up your leadership, triple latte, not just a latte, a triple latte. And for the price of a 1 or 2 or 3 triple lattes, maybe we could impart some knowledge about leadership. So I formed Triple Latte Leadership. Betamore was just starting. So I reached out to Betamore and I said, look, I've got a full-time gig. I love my full-time job, but I kind of feel a calling to start this company. It's a must, it's not a should. So formed Triple Latte Leadership really to provide 2 or 3 services or products, to speak on the subjects of leadership and engagement, to write on the subjects of leadership and engagement, and to do some very, very limited one-on-one executive coaching on leadership and engagement. So Triple Latte Leadership is really focused on the concept of we're all leaders. We are all leaders. We sometimes maybe don't recognize that we're leaders, but we're all leaders. And the fact that we can be more effective leaders, and effective leaders leave clues. And then finally, that this is a time in our families, in our communities, in our country, in our world, where we've got to help people to be the best leaders they can be. And if I can have just a tiny little part of that by meeting with somebody at Betamore, at City Garage, or on Federal Hill, and having a cup of coffee and talking with them about those universal aspects of leadership, then that's a really good day. Again, leadership does leave clues. And so I think effective leaders, if you go back and look at the history of the most effective political leaders in our country, or if you look at the successful leaders in the non-for-profit world or in commerce, not only in the United States, but across the world, you'll notice that there are these things that effective leaders do. And notice I'm not pointing out good leaders or bad leaders. I'm very explicitly talking about effective versus ineffective leaders. So effective leaders listen. Effective leaders separate people from the problem. Effective leaders focus on interests and not position. And all of these attributes, they're a riff off a great book, Getting to Yes by Uri and Fisher. So Uri and Fisher are negotiations professors at Harvard. And probably Getting to Yes is arguably the one of the 2 most effective, most widely read books on negotiation in the United States. The other one coming out of Wharton and Professor Richard Schell. I've been very fortunate to study directly with Richard Schell at Wharton, but I went deeper with Uri and Fisher when I studied at Hopkins. Not directly, but indirectly. And so in Getting to Yes, in this blueprint on effectively negotiating, Uri and Fisher talk about, in negotiation, effective negotiators separate people from the problem, right? The negotiation task, it's not the person you're negotiating with. The problem is the problem. It's not the person. Separating the person from the problem. Focusing not on your opponent's position or your position, but shared interest. Looking for opportunities for mutual gain, agreeing on a measurement for success. So effective negotiators do this, but what's incredibly valuable is I think you can substitute in the work of Uri and Fisher leadership for negotiators. So just as effective negotiators do those things, effective leaders do the same. Also, I think somebody like myself with a political background who studied government at Johns Hopkins, I find it amazing that we are so used to having the president do a presidential state of address. It's something that we've come to look for in January every year, the president going to Congress and speaking before the Congress and giving a report on the state of the union. But most people don't realize that from Jefferson up into Woodrow Wilson, those addresses were delivered in writing, right? So Washington, Adams, they delivered speeches. Jefferson, one of our most eloquent, thoughtful leaders, was said to have had a speech impediment. He stuttered. And he was a brilliant writer, and he didn't believe in this concept of the imperial presidency. And so with Jefferson, very early in the time of the Republic, we stopped having speeches for the State of the Union. And we didn't have another one again until Woodrow Wilson as president, who was our PhD president and an expert in presidential war powers and a graduate from Hopkins. What that means is that politicians, they're effective communicators. Effective politicians are effective communicators. Effective leaders are effective communicators. But that doesn't mean that they're necessarily effective speakers. They could be effective writers. They could be incredibly active listeners. So these are the things that we talk about at Triple Latte Leadership, in addition to just a wide range of books and subjects in terms of leadership.